Thank you for auditing.
Thank you for Quadeca auditing.
What was that? The always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who will be making edits. There will be a guest star. You just saw her. That's Ramdin. She'll be making a much longer appearance later. And we're going to be talking about the new album, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, by Quadeca. Not Quadeca, Quadeca. So why is there going to be edits? Why do I have a guest star? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I have never gotten more requests for an album than I have for this. Somebody who I'd never heard of. I had never heard Quadeca before last week. And all of a sudden, all of my comment sections are just filled with people asking for Quadeca. And I'm sort of like, okay, I don't know. And I start to wonder, like, is this a meme? Is this a meme joke? I was on some random Fantano video, and all the comments under Fantano's videos were review Quadeca, review Quadeca. And so I'm like, is this some sort of like, let's see what music reviewers will do? And so I sort of like dismissed it. I don't really know why. And then I got a comment from Janelle, who's one of the more consistent commenters here. I appreciate people who comment consistently. And you know, they said that this was a really good album, so I'm like, okay. And then I got a comment from Ramdin, the person who just jumped in that you saw at the beginning of the episode. And I watched Ramdin's videos. I really like her content. I like her artistry. I like her commentary. I like her perspective. So I'm like, okay, there's definitely something real happening here. So I listened. And I liked it. I didn't hear it and go, oh, this is trash. But I liked it, you know. I recognized that it was good. I understood the sort of emotion to it. But I also realized there is something I am not getting. Like what am I not getting? There are depths to this album. And more importantly, depths to the listening experience. I'm not going to edit that out. Even though I'm editing this video, I'm going to leave my little mistakes. You got to have my little mistakes. There are depths to the listening experience that I can't access. And it has to do with the lived experience of the artist. Now, you might think, some white guy who loves hip-hop being creative in his house, of course I can relate to that. I mean, that's what I'm doing here on this channel a few times a week. But there's something else happening here. And that has to do with where this devotion comes from, why this album is taking people offhanded. Like there's really something happening here, and I didn't know what it was. That's a Bob Dylan lyric. And I was just excited because maybe I'll get it. Like maybe I'll figure out, why am I an outsider to this experience? And the thing is, I am an outsider to this kind of youth culture. Now, it's funny because I review tons of music where I'm an outsider, you know, with the exception of like, I don't know, Radiohead or something. Very few artists, I think, sort of speak to my entire perspective or my upbringing or how I identify. You know, I review so many artists who are African American, who are women, who are trans, who are gay. And I'm a total outsider to that, and I'm okay with that, and I understand that. But it's different when what you're an outsider to is an age. You know, like I mean, I'm an outsider to music made for older people, but there's not much of that. But to be an outsider for music made for younger people is weird because I was a younger people. At one point, I was a younger people. You can quote me on that, okay? I was a younger people once. So it's not quite the same kind of outsider. I can still sort of access it. I can plug into my me of 23 years ago, and I can sort of imagine what was I like in my early 20s, late teens. How would I have reacted to this? And so I realized that the divide for me understanding this album, and I think part of the reason why people want me to understand this album, is in that divide. I don't know if there was a term to describe the kind of people who love this album. The term I came up with is a TOIP, a terminally online young person, and that's not a criticism. I'm not criticizing people for being terminally online. I consider myself to be an outstandingly online older person. You know, I'm way more online than most people my age. I wouldn't say I'm terminally online. In general, middle-aged people who are terminally online, that's where you find a lot of the conspiracy theories. I don't know. I think the time freedom that comes with youth leads to that sort of terminal onlineness, and then eventually life sort of takes over and you have to just be quite online but not terminally online. And so that's what I'm interested in, is how does this music reflect the toyps? How does it reflect the young people these days, the young, very internet savvy people these days? And how can I treat it as just a piece of art? Because art is a cultural product. And all art is for everyone's appreciation. There is not a single piece of art that any person is forbidden from appreciating. That does not mean that everybody can participate in all cultures that made that art. This is a very fine line that gets blurred very easily. I just did that review of Nas last week, and I got a ton of comments saying, go back to your tower, white man, or this is not for you, white man, you can't understand this. And the thing is, I don't even take offense to that, because it's true. Rap music is not made by or for me or people with my experience. I am not of the culture, as an example. But I refuse to believe that any art is outside of my appreciation. It does not exist. I think somebody who is born in the O Block of Chicago can listen to Bach's Goldman variations and appreciate them in the same way that some German teenager can listen to some music from the O Block and appreciate it. Appreciation, not participation, not stealing, not taking over, not representation, but appreciation. So that's the angle that I'm taking. Kind of an outsider angle to this toyp culture. The more I say toyp, the less I like it. But I don't know. Maybe you have a preferred term. Why don't you let me know? I'll take a sip of my coffee here. So I did what I think anyone should do when confronted with culture they don't really know how to approach. I just asked. I turned it around. Everyone is saying, review Quadeca, review Quadeca, review Quadeca. And so I just said, why? Tell me why. You tell me. You tell me what it is that you hear that's so meaningful and so great. So for the most part, y'all are taking the wheel. Now, due to several traumatic drunken driving instances in my life, I'm a terrible backseat driver, because I've not felt safe in a car when other people are driving. So in general, I have a kind of a control issue in a car. It's also why I'm afraid of flying. Dropping some knowledge on you there. So I don't usually like letting people take the wheel. But this is a great exception, because when I asked you, the toyps in my audience, to tell me what makes this so great, y'all turned into music critics. You don't need me. Listen to what Caleb D7 from my Reddit thread said. We have seen this guy grow from a 10th grader in high school making meme rap tracks to now being a full-grown adult creating some of the most interesting genre-bending hip-hop, indie, electronic, shoegaze, folk, rock, fusion tracks I have ever heard. That's a pretty good description. This really helps me a lot to understand the meaning of this. On my community page on YouTube, Wyatt Green posted something with 71 thumbs up. He has been a YouTuber for years and has made YouTube rap, very lyrical, spiritual, miracle type rap and diss tracks on other YouTubers, so his evolution from that kind of music/content into making more meaningful and emotional art has been very unexpected, and he has grown as an artist a huge amount in really just the last 2 years. The average music fan who passively knows who he is probably not expecting an album of this creative, conceptual, heartfelt from him. So while I do think the album is good and worthy of praise, his internet persona and the insane amount of artistic growth that is on display in the album is a big part of the hype behind it. So I'm starting to get it. I didn't see the first half of this movie, all right? There's a character arc here, and I'm just coming in the last act. And so I'm seeing the protagonist slay the antagonist, and I didn't even know who the protagonist was. A dank pancake. None other and Expire all use the word evolution. So this really appears to be about evolution and about growth. Eichskells makes it a little bit more specific, less focused on the concept of evolution. His perspective on death resonating so deeply with me and how I view life. I've never had an album help me understand life more than that album. I'm going to get into this soon. But if you are an artist and you can like actually move, and I mean one person, one person like this, you have succeeded as an artist. Okay? Like you have. Like if, and I assume that Icegells is speaking for many other people. That is an impressive feat. Vincent Moncler, I'm just going to pronounce his name French, who knows? I think it's because he is one of us. Again, this sense of one of us. And here's where I'm going to move towards an interesting idea of treating TOIPs as citizens of the internet, as opposed to individual demographics spread throughout many geographical locations. I'm going to be treating sort of TOIPs and YouTube fans here. You know, Silent Clashes says he's a YouTuber. I think everyone's just surprised. Gabriel's Dead says probably has to do with the fact they're shocked a YouTuber rap album has so much substance. Quadeca was seen as just another lame YouTube rap kid in the same lane as Jake Paul. Josh Burcham says what could be the thumbnail to this entire video. I don't know what I'm going to thumbnail it. The catharsis of realized potential. So here's my challenge to myself and to you and to Quadeca. Is this a 4A album? 4A is a term which exists kind of, but I really want to popularize it more. Is it good for a YouTube rapper? The same way that you can dismiss many things, you know. I have a couple albums out on Bandcamp, which are good for a middle-aged YouTuber, okay? I dance really well for a guy who's never learned how to dance and doesn't have particularly good innate rhythm, okay? There's tons of 4A situations that are very often used to minimize other people's success. This is where I want to get a little evangelical. I want to spread the good news. Presumably, you're watching this channel. Presumably, you are like me and you watch a lot of YouTube. The thing is, most likely, you do not have the authority that I have. Okay, I play with my authority, but I recognize it. Even though I'm a pretty small-sized YouTuber on the grand scale of things, the position that I present is one of a fair amount of authority. You know, I mean, I'm a dad. I talk about being a dad. I have a baby and 2 teenagers. I have a doctorate. I am such a professor that I have elbow patches. Do you know why I have elbow patches? Because I was writing on the board so much that I wore out the sides. You know, this tweed indicates thriftiness, style. I'm so distinguished, okay? All of those little semiotics of authority, it's in here. And then now I'll say it, a well-respected music critic on the website YouTube. So I think there's a desire for people to get this sort of sense of validation. Because like they want to know he's one of us. And if he can do something great, something that rises above just TOIP music, just YouTube rap. If he can do something that rises above Jake Paul, then maybe me, 23-year-old kid in Peoria, Illinois, watching this video, I don't know, maybe I am more than just a 23-year-old kid watching too much YouTube. Maybe I can transcend. Maybe I am not wasting my time. Maybe it's okay that I don't read as many books as my mom wishes I would read. Or maybe it's okay that I am not as dedicated to my part-time job as my parents would like. Okay, all these sorts of things. That like there is this catharsis of realized potential, as Josh Burcham said. But also there's like this real sense of like, maybe we're not worthless. And it's tricky because we live in a society, we live in a world where validation, like we're finally understanding the importance of validation, okay? Validation is very important. People need to be more validated than they are. And the long-standing joke, going back to when I was a kid, is that kids these days are getting validated for everything. The participation trophy. If everyone gets a star, then the stars are worthless. But in reality, I don't think the social mores have caught up with this idea. We don't actually live in a validating world. We may be raising our kids to feel more validated while they are growing up. I mean, I'm serious. When my teenagers were babies, we were told to make them scream themselves to sleep at a certain point. It's called Ferberizing. This was what doctors suggested. I remember my son just screaming himself to sleep and me feeling like I was doing something wrong but having to do it. No. This baby upstairs, she's hungry, she eats. She's tired, she sleeps. We just totally accommodate. When I learned how to teach, the professor who was like leading everything, who was like teaching me how to teach, said never correct with a red pen. Students associate that with judgment. And part of me wants to go all, your generation is soft, but screw that. Red pen sucks. Why not? Why not validate each other? It has been proven in many studies. MITs at Harvard are saying validation is important. But we live in a society which does not validate us very much. We really don't. I personally think it's because the business mentality has kind of crept into every corner. I see it all the time in education. It's about productivity. It's about line going up. It is about assessment. It is about data crunching. It's not so much about like fostering and recognizing people's success and work. It's a very sort of rigid, flattening system that we're going in here. So it makes sense to me that young people, even though they are more validated while growing up than I was, that doesn't mean that they don't need the validation. And it doesn't mean that I didn't need it either. So when we're talking about YouTube artists, we're talking about YouTube, I feel like a fraud sitting here because I don't think you need it. I don't. Most of the YouTubers that you watch are artists. They're not content creators. There's one term which I think we should ban from good discourse. That is content creation. You're not just slinging tent, as Scott Arkerman would say. Okay? Content is obscene, all right? But, I mean, Video Game Donkey is an artist. He's a comedian. The Big Money Salvia is an artist. He's a comedian. Thought Slime is an artist. He's also a commentator. If people are not artists, they might be intellectuals. I say it all the time. I do not believe there is an intellectual on planet Earth as influential, as important, as smart as FD Signifier. I will keep saying it. I don't care if he's a YouTuber. I don't care if he didn't finish his doctorate. Period. There is no above that. But there's not enough people like me with elbow patches running around telling people this, So I'll do it. I'll do it for you, but it doesn't need to happen. I mean, the other day I just happened to watch Defunctland, which is a great series. It's sort of about like old amusement parks, but it's really much more than that. And at the end, Kevin Perjurer, the person mostly behind Defunctland, he's like lamenting, like asking, like, will I leave a legacy? Like, am I an artist or am I just a content creator? And I cannot have been alone at screaming into my phone, like, you are like one of the great entertainers like on planet Earth right now. I mean, Defunctland comes out. His whole thing was about the Disney theme to Disney Channel. I didn't watch Disney Channel. I'm too old. I watched an hour and a half of someone talking about 4 notes that I've never heard before. If that's not an artist, if that's not somebody engaging and creating, then what is? So I am going to talk. I am going to talk about this album, and I'm going to review it. And I understand that it is validating for people, and I want that to be validating. But you don't need it. If you listen to this album and you like this album and you recognize that it's good, that's the success. That's it. Also, it's new, but not really. Like, it's not actually new, this phenomena. I'm going to put forth the idea that it's a regional phenomena. It's a repetition of regional phenomena. I don't know where Quadeca comes from. I haven't looked. I don't know what he looks like. I haven't watched. I guess I maybe saw like one of his videos. But like, I don't know. Is he from Texas? Let's say he's from Dallas. suburban Dallas. I don't know. He's from the town called Quadeca in suburban Dallas. The region that he's from is Toyp land, is internet land. The way that people are talking about him and hyping him up, it's like when somebody from a small community makes it onto American Idol. Okay, so if someone from a small community makes it onto American Idol, that community goes crazy and promotes them, and they're on the front page of the newspaper, and they share the signs, and they make little films. Or whatever, just if there's a band from your hometown. You know, I grew up in Boston, and whenever there was a band that had even a minor success from Boston, like, I felt a certain amount of pride, and there's a kind of validating pride because I related to that. I associated that. I thought they were representing me. So now that we live in a decentralized world where geography basically doesn't matter, and if there's one thing, okay, global warming will make sure that geography really matters. But without that, after COVID, geography is a sort of inconvenience at this point in terms of spatial distance. So this is the success of us. And I'm going to include myself as an oop, as somebody who spends a lot of time on YouTube. Even though I've never heard Quadeca, I can recognize that this is our people who are making this success, who are having this success, who are doing something which is good for a YouTuber, and this is why you watch my channel. This video is gonna be a long video. Ramdin sent me like 40 minutes. I thought she was gonna send me like a 2-minute thing. Mad respect. This is why you watch my channel, is for this kind of deep analysis. This album is good. Period. Hey, there you go. No 4A. So I am still letting you with the wheel. I'm going to mostly allow Rose to talk about this album. I'm going to jump in from time to time. I am going to put forth a couple ideas up front here, a couple Skyeisms to help you, just some more ideas. My main one, if I were to review this album just strictly sort of much less sort of integrated the way I'm doing it now, is the idea that he started off as a YouTube rapper is interesting because the term YouTube rapper is such an insult. SoundCloud rapper is a half insult, half compliment. But just the term YouTube rapper, what it evokes is so negative. And what I think it is, at least when I think of YouTube rappers, I don't even think of Jake Paul. I think of that Tom MacDonald character, the Canadian racist. By the way, like, part of the reason, it's hard. Can you like this video? Can you please subscribe? And watch a couple of my other videos and leave comments and stuff? Because I see all the other YouTubers making videos about Tom MacDonald, and you don't think I couldn't do an awesome, funny video about that asshat? Oh my God! I could kill it, but I'm a positive channel. I want to support art. I want to support art. So I would love your subscription and your like bucket smashed because I have the integrity not to go after that weird racist. But that's what I kind of think of, sort of like bad rhymes and memes. But the difference is, what Quadeca does is, I don't think you should think of Tom MacDonald. You should think of someone who is a real student of the game. Like, I think he's more similar to Crank Lucas. I don't know if you know Crank Lucas's videos. He does amazing satire of rap music. And he also makes good rap music. It's the same idea. Satire is very difficult. Satire is exaggeration of something to comedic effect. In order to be a good satirist, you have to understand the thing that you're satirizing. So the one thing I saw by Quadeca was a couple videos that he did where he imitated different rappers' production styles and different rappers' flow. That means he's a student of the game. He's thinking about the way rhymes are made. He is studying at a deep level the components of a rap song. That is not trivial. That is not minor. That is like a legitimately difficult thing to do, which the majority of people cannot do. 99.9% of rap fans, and I don't care if they were born in the Bronx in 1973, the majority of rap artists can't do that. Of course, several can, you know. I mean, I think Lupe Fiasco and Nas and Kendrick probably could. I saw an interesting video with Royce da 5'9", who was talking about when Eminem was coming up, and Eminem was explaining to him, like, Eminem taught him about meter and rhyme and how it works. You know, so there's a lot of these sort of students of the game and real students of rap. But this should not be just dismissed. It shouldn't just be like, oh yeah, he did a good imitation of it. Because what happens is when you imitate people, you're using them to teach you. So it's funny because I watched Rose's video that she's doing, and she's doing a video in my style, sort of unedited, talking to the camera, not a lot of moving. And it's fun because I see her, like I can actually see her think about doing videos like that. And then while I'm doing this video, well, I'm going to actually be cutting myself into her scenes. I'm going to try to like sort of do a little imitation of her style sometimes, lots of fun asides and staring at the refrigerator, or putting the camera inside the refrigerator. You should really watch her videos, by the way, they're great. You know, but like there's something that you learn by imitating. And trust, hey, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Just for fun. Imitate me. Do a video where you just turn on the camera and you just film yourself talking about an album and just see what happens. You know, you'll actually find that you're learning different ways of collecting thoughts. So when thinking about this YouTube rapper, it's a very different thing. To be Crank Lucas is not to be Jake Paul. The album also, and this is something which Rose is going to get into, is very narratively cohesive. Checkpoint referred to it as a musical movie. See, now you're driving again. Mute the Messiah. Watch out. Sorry. There's somebody in your blind spot, and I thought you were going to change lanes. Sorry. You do not drive in a car with me. I hate it. I hate how hard it is for me to just sit in the passenger seat of a car. Trauma is not nice. The Mute the Messiah said, makes everything feel desolate yet grand. Again, y'all don't need me. Y'all do not need me. That is it. Desolate yet grand. That's it. I mean, right there, Mute the Messiah. You also, whoever you are a 17-year-old girl from Saskatoon. Who knows what you are? Who knows where you are? But you're in Toypland, okay? Makes everything feel desolate yet grand. Ariane Serene says the whole ghost story concept is an incredibly interesting metaphor for his fear of letting go, told through his emotional journey, being afraid of death, to accepting it. The soundscape is abstracted, posthumous storyline of a project makes me feel like I'm in another world once I press play. So that's what I understand. That's what I get. This album is told from the perspective of a ghost. Sorry, I didn't mean to haunt you. But the ghost is a metaphor for a lot of other things. It's about like longing in life, and like they said, like it's about death, but it's also about change, and it's about how people move on from you, even when you're alive. So I'd like to challenge you, okay? How many other artists have made this comparison? There must be some, but it's a pretty fine concept. It's not just a concept album. Whoa, I'm dead. What if I'm a ghost? Blah! You know? Now, you can use that, by the way. That's public domain, okay? Anyone wants to take that, put that into a jam, you can do that. That's not what it's about. It's about the pain of seeing other people move on. Which is important for young people to hear. Because it's a thing that happens, you know? You go off to college, or you move to LA, or your friends move to LA. It's hard. You know, Thanksgiving's coming up. Thanksgiving's on Thursday. And I'm reminded of when my brothers stopped coming to Thanksgiving. You know, they had their own families. I remember I once spent Thanksgiving dinner at the 7-Eleven in Woburn. The same 7-Eleven memorialized by Eric Bogosian in the play Suburbia. I ate a spicy Big Bite for my Thanksgiving meal. So sad. But you know, like, if I had this music instead of just whatever, probably Neil Young or Biz Markie I was listening to, I think it would have really helped me to feel like there's this movement and people were moving on, and it was without me. And like I was invisible, but like I was hopefully still in their mind. I don't do this very often, but I'm actually getting goosebumps. I'm actually getting goosebumps thinking about how I would have felt as in my late teens if I had this music directly into my ears. So, let's get to the review proper. This is you know, I know it's gonna be a long video, but listen, if you're terminally online and you're like me, when you see a creator that you like, and you see that they have a video that's like more than an hour, you're like, yes! It's the best feeling. Sometimes my kids say, you gotta make shorter videos. I don't want the fans that want the shorter videos. I want the fans that want the long videos. But it's not just me, it's also Rose. So, I'm going to pass on to her. She'll give her a little introduction, we'll have her, and then I'll interject at time to times with my thoughts on specific. I have tons of other notes, okay? I have tons of other notes on the album, which I will be interjecting. But I really want to let Rose drive this because she is a toyp. You know, she is more than half my age, very online, but a great creator. My one suggestion, if you don't know her work, because she does a lot of like commentary, which is often a lesser art on YouTube. So like watching a TikTok and then commenting on it. It's sort of seen as a lesser art than writing video essays. What she's able to do is infuse video essays into the commentary. And now I'm just riffing here. That's sort of what I'm doing too. Because I sort of think that music reviewing sometimes is a lesser art. I mean, when it's done well, it's done well. But sometimes it's sort of like, I like it, I don't like it. So that's why I try to have, like, secretly every single one of my music reviews is actually a video essay, you know, because that's my favorite thing is video essays. So even though you might look at the thumbnails and you see it's, you know, and she has like, I don't know, 3 times my audience, and probably like 10 times my influence in terms of just her online, all that stuff. A great example is her commentary on the John Mulaney situation. John Mulaney being found to be a philanderer and recidivating into drug usage. In particular, Rose's work on parasocial relationships is very, very good. She has another essay on the Try Guys, who I'd never even heard of. But you know, there's apparently somebody on the internet, like an archetype on the internet, called a wife guy, which is me, by the way. I talk about my wife all the time. Like, I'm totally comfortable having my personality be defined by how much I love my wife and my kids. But it's really great. It's a very, very, very interesting exploration of the nature of parasocial relationships. And I think she does it the best, just as an example of some of her better work. So, but you'll see how great she is when she jumps on here and does a very good job of satire of my style while explaining this great album. So I pass. I'm gonna have my coffee. You will see me jump in from time to time, but I'm gonna let Rose take the wheel here. So go.
Thank you for Quadeca Auditing, the frequently positive show, usually taught by a French professor, taken over by a commentary YouTuber who is very excited and grateful to Professor Skye for giving her the opportunity to talk about one of her favorite albums of the year. She also did her makeup, which she usually doesn't do for ad reads. So, yeah, I'm sure Professor Skye has already given a pretty good introduction to the record, but I want to talk about what really makes the album compelling to me. And the first thing I need to mention is that I am not an unbiased source. Ben Quadeca, his real name is Ben, so I'm going to call him Ben because it would feel weird. But Ben is one of my closest friends. I have known him for over a year now. Recently, we always keep track of it because we met a year ago when I started doing YouTube. He's one of my biggest supporters. We are very artistically involved. We send each other songs, and he has been helping me sort of artistically sculpt my next album for the better part of a year. So Ben, I am very close to him, but this album I did not hear fully until it came out, and it exceeded all of my expectations. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that Quadeca Ben was a YouTube rapper. And there are a lot of people in the YouTube rapper subgenre. People who are often thought of are Gone, Crypt, Dax, Mac Lethal, people like this. And they're thought
I have never heard of any of those people.
of as fast white boy rappers, sort of Eminem's gaggle of offspring, rappers that prioritize speed, complex prosody, puns and whatnot, and then sort of neglect a lot of other artistic things. And Ben, for a long time, also kind of did this. A lot of his biggest songs are goofier, fast rap bangers. And so for the longest time, up until 2020, Ben was sort of organized into a group with all of these other artists, these YouTube rappers, until he dropped this song Sisyphus. And Sisyphus is insanely good. Sisyphus is a ridiculous song, and it's off of his album From Me to You, which he released last year, I want to say. Last year. It was last year. And Sisyphus deals with this idea of, the perpetual rolling the rock up the hill, it rolling back down. And it ties into the entirety of his album From Me to You with this metaphor of a mountain, a mountain being whatever, a relationship, problems, whatever road you have to climb in front of you is the mountain. And Sisyphus is just beautifully produced, has these massive vocals, wonderful string sections, choirs, guitars. It was something completely unlike anything Ben had ever done before. And pretty much everybody was insanely taken aback by it. It was just wowed, myself included, because at the time I had known about him since I was in high school, and I went and I listened to the song and I said, holy shit, this is better than anything I've ever made. He totally threw me on my ass with that one. But when listening to his album, From Me to You, it was inconsistent. I've talked with him a lot about it. I've said many times that I love some of the tracks. Some of my favorite songs he's ever made are on there and on the deluxe of that album. But it's an inconsistent mix. Some of the tracks are really good. Some of the tracks are just okay. Some of them I don't like. And there are highs and lows. And then additionally, it's bloated. It's I think 18 tracks, 24 with the deluxe. It's a really long listen, and it feels like there's some space that's not made the best use of. So a big part of why this album is so hyped is because YouTube rapper fans are usually ostracized because they're seen as fans of lame, unartistic, sort of corny music. And Ben's artistic evolution has sort of, I've talked to him about it personally, and he sort of wants to expand the music taste of these people who he is making the music for, which I think is an honorable pursuit.
You see, that's really interesting as an idea, that he was intentionally trying to improve the taste of his own audience. But this is something I couldn't have known without Rose telling me. But I think it's something that a lot of artists do, especially a lot of artists with younger fans or fans who are fans of them without really being fans of music necessarily. So I think this is something that is really important that good artists can do, where they can sort of bring their audience along. And before you start thinking this is a new phenomena, George Harrison tried to get his fans to get interested into Indian music, just as a brief example. This adds a whole new context to the album, where this artist is actually cognizant of their role as king of the toips. I'm now liking toips. Okay, back to Rose.
And he also wants to make music that is really good and that really makes him feel something. He wants to make his artistic masterworks, which is unbelievable. And I think he did it this way with this project. So now onto the record. I didn't mean to haunt you. So a lot of things stand out to me about this project, but probably the biggest one is that it's a really focused concept album, which I think his last album tried to be, and it fell a little bit short because of the bloatedness, because of some of the wordiness in verses, things like this. It got off track. It got unfocused. This album is laser focused. Every single track has a point. Every single track explores it fully. It's 11 tracks long, about an hour long. It is on the money when it wants to talk about what it talks about. And it's very cinematic. It goes scene by scene. There are flashbacks. The production is vast and it swirls around you. It's very ethereal. And Sorry, Professor Skye, you can cut me stumbling here.
But I won't. It's awesome. Right? Everyone in the comments, isn't it great? Isn't it great seeing her just long form without the edits? It's awesome. It's not stumbling, it's finding your thoughts, you know? Just do what I do, you know, just sort of look away and then sort of think in your mind, oh, shit, I have to think of something. I don't know, rub your mouth and then say something cool.
A huge part of this album that makes it so compelling from a story perspective is that he incorporates these themes that he's talking about really creatively. And before we get into that, just a quick outline of what the story is, right? The album is about sort of an alternate universe Ben, I suppose, who takes his own life and comes back as a ghost.
So I read it as death, but I didn't actually read it as suicide. So that does color the idea, like the album, a little bit more. Maybe makes it a little bit darker. I don't know. Let's see where Rose goes. Let's see where the rose goes. Let's see where the rose goes.
So that's the concept, right? And the album is from the ghost perspective. And there are so many songs that incorporate these ideas in these really thought-provoking, interesting, almost fun ways, right? They're creative. They're clearly not the first idea he had. He iterated on them a lot. And you can hear in the songs that these are well thought out. You know, that it's not just like a Jenga tower of like whatever idea came next he stuck with. He built something really, really intentional. So I guess now I'm just going to get into the track list and sort of tell you exactly what about every single song. I have a little doc here. What about every single song spoke to me, and what exactly I feel stands out to me about all of them. So the opening track, Sorry for Dying. Oh boy. The opening track, Sorry for Dying, it reminds me a bit of a suicide note, right? He's expressing all of these things. He says he's sorry for dying. There's this huge choir with these rapturous trumpets, and it sounds very much like you're being welcomed to heaven, like the clouds are opening and the light is pouring through. And there's this understanding of what he's done to himself. With the sort of kooky piano lines. This is a good opener in my opinion. I think it really picks up towards the second half of it, and it's not my favorite track on the album, but I think it's a really fitting introduction for tonally and thematically where the album is going.
Before moving on to track 2, I will add that I really do enjoy the movement of this song, how it starts off with that church organ. I swear to God, I hear a ghost from Mario laughing, like, but could just be that I love that character. You have to excuse my wife is doing some housework in the back, but part of this whole kinetic thing, and my baby's over there making noises. I do love the epic opening. It has this. The thing is that I really want to emphasize about what Quadeca does really well is rhythm. So I think part of the reason that this album is so good is that we're having somebody who has studied the way rappers rap, the way they think, and if you study rap music at all, you understand the main thing that it is using rhythm and using voice. And there's like it starts off with very little sort of overt rhythm, and then there's some drum lines, and then by the end it's all rumbling, and it's very exciting, and it creates a real sense of movement. It is a great opening track. I'd also like to quote Adrian from YouTube. Said his first favorite track is Sorry for Dying. The chime at the beginning, at the end, was played very well. It was played at the end of the music video for Born Yesterday, and that chime has stuck with me since then. It's just ingrained in my mind. I emphasize that because it shows that this is an artist who understands their audience and how to connect a song to a song, an idea to an idea, visuals to music, and very clearly that is resonating with the audience. Okay, let's get back to Rose with track 2.
Tell Me a Joke is the first track on the album. It's the second track, but it's the first track on the album that I really, truly love to pieces. So this whole song takes place around this concept that you are so dejected with life that it is a joke, and the punchline, right, would be death. And this isn't, the most original idea, but it works really well to establish this sort of off-kilter, like lived-in world. Because of course a ghost would be comfortable cracking jokes about its own death. And then additionally, there's this sense of like this cruel humor to it, right? Where he understands the gravity of everything, right? He says, all I can hear is the crickets. There's nobody laughing. He took his own life, and now he's living with that, and the joke is on him. There was no punchline, no satisfaction to be found from this incredibly serious action, this hurting himself that he did. It was just it was vacuous. It was a completely, functionless, horrible decision. And it does a lot to develop the character and infuse it with a sense of relatability because it's such a human thing. And it's funny because this is a character that is no longer human. He's gone to air. It is human to air. And to sort of start off the first real track on this album, past the opener, with like, tell me a joke about airline food that reminds me of my ex-wife, with these sort of like haunting little laughs in the background. It's almost like hearing a little kid like play pretend with himself, right? He's discovering himself in this new world, and now he's cracking jokes. He's role playing. He's pretending and coping with this terrible realization. And the crescendo towards the end of the track is just beautiful. I love the sort of change in the chord progression, how it modulates up, and it's almost gospel-y, and it just really feels explosive. And I'll add that the music video for this is great too. There's some really nice shots with a spotlight, and he told me all about traveling everywhere, through Europe, multiple countries, just to film these videos. And the visual album itself pays off alone. It is beautiful. It was shot by Thaddeus Swift, who is the main cinematographer that Ben works with. Thaddeus is great. I think his work with Ben is some of the best because there's so much artistic merit behind every idea that Ben has. So yeah, if you haven't seen the visual album, go watch that, and at least go watch the Tell Me a Joke video, because it adds a lot to this idea of this sort of this person whose mind is poisoned by their own demise.
I'm not sure if I agree this is the first song. I think I like the first song more than this song, but I do like it. I definitely understand. I haven't seen the visual component of this album at all. I do like how it starts off kind of scratchy sounds. I'm sort of torn on the cliched nature of stand-up comedy. What's the deal with airline food? It sort of seems like it's having its cake and eating it too. So it's like delivering cliche jokes, but then also delivering it seriously. I think it's all saved though at the end with the play on words of "it was all a setup. The punchline is me." I think that's maybe my favorite lyric on the whole album, because it's a great play on that concept of a joke being a setup and a punchline, and a setup being like a trap. So like his whole life was a setup, and the punchline, I suppose, was his death. And I definitely love the distorted sounds of the audience in the background. Reminded me a little bit sort of like the ending of the movie The King of Comedy by Scorsese, which you should see because it's a great movie. And also the whole song reminded me a lot of the Bee Gees song "I Started a Joke." That started the whole world laughing. That whole song. If you don't know it, it's a great song by a band that you're like, wait, is that really the Bee Gees? Like the disco Bee Gees? Yeah, you should really check it out. So before I get to the next track, so Rose mentioned that she's wearing makeup for this video, which is great. Did you know that I wear makeup about 1 in every 10 videos? Because even though you're in your 40s, you still get acne. I got this little zit there. It's been bugging me. So I'm going to go take care of that. I got my concealer. See? See how you do it right now? Look at that. You see that? There, bam. Can't even tell I'm wearing makeup. All right. On to track 3. See if you can see it for the rest of the video. That'll be a little Easter egg. All right, track 3, on to Rose.
So Don't Mind Me is the next track after that. It's probably my least favorite on the record, but my least favorite on the record is still like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, right? There's a lot here to like. The production, really big, really boomy, really vast. It's heart-wrenching. There are these ideas of like picking up boxes, moving past his family, moving past him. And it is heartbreaking, but it's not it's not a track that I focus on the most.
I think I agree. It's maybe not the strongest track. I like the haunting noises. It keeps things kind of thematically consistent. I do like the sort of stabbing synthesizers as well. My main issue is there's kind of like a fast rapping part, and I just never really like fast rapping, almost ever. There is a little moment in here with the production where there's this like voice in the background singing like "it is well" or "all is well." That's what I call like a production flex, where somebody is able to do a little production thing that's very remarkable, very interesting, but they just do it once and don't even highlight it. So on repeat listenings, you're like, damn, where did you find that? You know, like it's pretty impressive. So that's definitely a highlight on a song, which may be a low light. Back to Rose.
The next track after this, track 4, Picking Up Hands, is an 11 out of 10 to me. This is my favorite song on the album, and quite possibly, it's in my top 5 songs of the year. I love this song, and 2 songs from this album at least are on my top 5 songs of the year. So Picking Up Hands, the title is sort of referring to this duality between literally, right, picking up, you know, a lost loved one's hands to cross them at a funeral. At least that's what it speaks to me. And then picking up hands is in like waking up, picking up your hands, looking at them, waking up in the afterlife and coming to terms with what you've done to yourself. There's this line where he says, I turn around covered in skin. So it's this idea that you expect death to be this ephemeral, unknowable state. And he wakes up so familiar, you know, his body is so in tune with what he usually thinks of life, but it's different. He's covered in skin. It's no longer comfortable. It's not his body. It's a vessel, and it's scary and really unnerving. You know, this idea of like being covered in skin is such a normal human thing, but it becomes ghastly and haunting, you know, when put in this context. There's also all of these ideas in this song about returning to the home that he died in and watching people. So there's this line where he says, I saw my mother's eyes for the second time, which is heartbreaking. And I think it's twofold, right? Because he's dead, so he's living this new life. I'm going to say it's twofold so many times. He's dead and he's living this new life, and he's returned to this home. And now he's looking at his mother's eyes, you know, for the first time sort of as this fresh new ghost, but for the second time as in like she's a different person after he's taken his own life. Which, God, that's so fucked up. Oh, am I allowed to swear? Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember if you swear in these videos. Sorry.
I don't, but I do. I mean, sometimes I do. I don't know. I swear a lot in my personal life, but I try not to on videos because I'm afraid of getting demonetized. And also, like, my kids' friends watch these videos, so like I don't want them to like see me be all like cocks, you know. But you know, it's no big deal. We're gonna leave in the swears, Rose.
But it's just mind-splinteringly sad to think, you know, that he's taken his own life and he goes back to his house and he has to watch his mother grieve him. And then I think that a line from this song that really, really nails exactly the feeling of this whole album is he tries to call to his dog, but the dog runs away from the sound. So, God, it's just a really sad, you know, feeling that, you know, this dog he grew up with, one of the probably only things in his life that he had cultivated a really personal relationship with, is running away from him because he has distorted himself. He has become something else entirely. And, you know, there's this idea that animals can communicate with the supernatural and whatnot, but the idea that he's now scaring something that he loved so much and he was so close to, that one hurts. And then the production of this song, oh my gosh. The little guitar lines, the riffs, they're so plucky, they're so cute, but also warbly, and they contain so much emotion in all of them. They're mic'd really, really intimately. I love how he records the vocals and the guitars on this album. And then the drop with these sort of like weird, sort of like glitchy, like almost drum machine type drums. There's so much to love about this track. It is wobbly, weird. There's so much tape distortion. His vocals are so wrought with emotion. I love this track. This track is maybe my favorite track of the year if it weren't for a track later on this album, but it still might be my favorite track of the year.
No arguments here. Stop looking. I'll just pet my dogs here while they can still see me while I'm on the earthly plane here. I agree. I mean, the production of the song is a real step up. I, again, want to really emphasize the rhythms, which I think is probably a hidden skill because, you know, there's a lot of other flashy stuff going on here, but this is basically like a waltz, and I really like that about this song. Jake Peckinpah from YouTube says there's an exact moment that gives him chills every single time at 2:57. He says there's no words to explain it, but it's almost overwhelming, the amount of emotion and power. And I hear that. I'm sorry, but my dogs are totally stealing the show. Look at these guys. You know, they didn't like each other at first. And now they just cuddle all day, don't you? That's Bobo, and that's Toby. Huh? I'm still alive. I'm not a ghost. I'm not a ghost. I got I got doggy eye goop on my hands. Gross. All right, back to Rose.
So after this, we get to Born Yesterday, which, you know, is a song. He sent me this, I think, a few weeks before it released and made me listen to it like 40 times because he wanted me to make sure that the master he was choosing was the right one, which I totally respect. He chose the right master on all of these. The album sounds amazing. He mixes like a fucking genius. I'm always astounded by how good he is at what he does. But Born Yesterday, a little bit self-explanatory, but it's this idea of like, I wasn't born yesterday. It's not as literal, but it's this idea of death as being reborn. So, you know, he did die recently, but he wasn't born yesterday. He still has all of this, these thoughts and these experiences and these emotions and these contextual sort of, you know, he understands the shortcomings that brought him to this place and exactly what he's missing out on. So he wasn't born yesterday, even though he just came into existence. And there's this really cool Beatles interpolation where, you know, this song is sort of about him solidifying regret in what he's done, right? It was the bad thing to do. And this Beatles interpolation takes this sort of saccharine, romantic, like heartbreak, and it sours it and turns it really personal and real because he's speaking to his mom for a lot of this track. And I'll read these lyrics here. All those little things I should have said out loud. All those little things that weigh heavy on the clouds. I had just a hint of doubt. I wish I let that hint become me. Just a little doubt. Couldn't figure out how to outrun me. And I'd be free if I just saved the date. I'd be here with you right now. And that day plan should have stayed delayed. Because the only thing I want is out. Every little thing I did to make you proud. So, right. He is fully solidified. And this was not the right thing to do. And speaking to his mother, saying the things that he was not able to say when he was alive, and knowing, you know, he wasn't born yesterday. He's not stupid. He knows he cannot communicate these things to her at all, and that he should have done it when he had the chance. But he just, this song is like one last shout to say, I did everything in my life to try to make you proud, to try to speak to you, to show you that you did something good in this world. And it's kind of an apology in a sense. And that's just heartbreaking.
Like Rose, I really find the idea of death being a rebirth to be an interesting idea as a ghost. In general, you know, whenever a singer or songwriter uses cliches, it's, in my opinion, it's kind of dangerous. You know, I'm somewhat famous, even though Radiohead is like my favorite group, for sort of criticizing Tom York for pretty consistently like recontextualizing cliches, you know, to do something a little bit different that's not different enough. I don't think it's the end of the world, but it's maybe a little amateurish. But, you know, again, like, would I be saying this if this guy were signed to a major label? You know, I mean, that's part of what's so tricky with all this, is how much is my preconceived notion of some guy who's one step away from Jake Paul, according to other people, not according to me. One step away from Jake Paul. Maybe I'm being a little bit more critical. I do really like how everything breaks apart at the end, and the way it leads into this sort of instrumental interlude, which Rose is about to describe right now.
And then Memories We Lost in Translation, really pretty ambient interlude. Sounds like turning back a VHS tape and like getting these pinhole camera memories of what your life was like. It really does. It feels like looking back on your childhood. And a lot of this album feels like looking back on your childhood. It feels very nostalgic. It's got a lot of tape effects, a lot of vinyl effects, a lot of static. It feels like it was just run through a dang carburetor, a garbage disposal, right? It feels totally torn up and thrown back together and distorted and wobbled. And I love that about it.
I hear that nostalgic bent. I also want to say quickly here, we're about halfway through the album, I listened to it the first time with no concept of a narrative. I wasn't listening for a concept album. And you can usually tell the strength of a concept album by how well it exists outside of the concept. And this album works outside of the concept. I think that's maybe a privilege I have of not being attached to Quadeca, because I'm not attached to it. I didn't have any build up. I was just able to listen to the album. I was like, cool. Obviously it builds more. It's better when you know the story too, but it works without it. Okay, I don't have much to say about that interlude. Rose said everything, so that's why I'm interjecting this now. Content.
House settling. I do have some insight on this one because he told me a lot about it when he was making it. I remember we were talking on the phone. He was calling and explaining the concept. This idea of like when you move into a house, you expect some weird things, and it's just like, oh, it's the house settling in. It's the water boiler being weird, or like, oh, this shakes during the night at random times because of how the piping works. But the concept of the song is that he is haunting the house of his family, and he is leaking carbon monoxide to either try to get the attention of his family or to kill them and to bring them to him. And the house settling, right, the thing that they're perceiving is just like, house is settling in, this is how it goes. It is not really that. It is his ghost begging for attention. Trying to get anything out. And there's this, God, he gets Danny Brown to rap from the perspective of carbon monoxide, which is just nuts. And the beat here, oh my God. This thing is crazy. There's just, so, like, texturally, it's so insane. The 808s are so grimy and like they're like atmospheric. They're bizarre, and it just keeps on driving. It's so wide and percussive. I love this drop. Really, really great track. And to say that that's not even top 5 tracks on the album, that's crazy to me.
What I would add to this commentary is the way that rap is used here. So I didn't know this song was about carbon monoxide or whatever that is. I am a homeowner, so I do have a carbon monoxide detector. It's one of those things you got to have. But what I love is that he's using rap and like the form of rap to imply desperation. That because there's so many words in rap, depending on how you deliver them, you can express power, you can express fear. But what's really being expressed here is like this desperation. And I think that's very, very well communicated in the style. And I think Danny Brown picks up on that and does that as well. And it's nice hearing a Danny Brown verse where I don't have to sort of go, I like it, but it's too misogynist, which is how I feel about most of Danny Brown's stuff. So there you go. Am I going too far with this jumping all over the house thing? I'm trying.
Knots. This is a good track. This is, I think, probably maybe the best written track on the album, which is wild. And that's because the concept is explored so thoroughly, right? The use of knots in so many ways. It's really fitting because it's like knots in his chest, right? Things he feels bad for, but knots on his neck, right? It's implying that he hanged himself. His passing becoming a metaphorical knot in the lives of his family members who are still alive, right? They speak about him and they reach a knot, right? If their speech is to be a rope, and they trip over him because his death really chokes them up. I remember the day that he made this song, he sent me a really early version, and it has evolved so much. I was really impressed because I liked that demo, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. That synth is so cool. And now the final song, it is like 1,000 times better. There's a lot of Death Grips inspiration in the first half. And there's also this interesting idea of like knots being like a stopper, right? He's holding back tears. And then there's just so much lyrical content here that I'm really enamored with. He talks about like walking a tightrope like it's acrobatic. So there's so much rope imagery here. The noose becomes a rope that he's walking. He doesn't cut to black. He fades to static because there's no finality to his death. It's just eternal suffering. It's horrible static. It is all encompassing. He says later in the track that he had to turn the oven off, which is a reference back to house settling, which there's just a lot of internal cohesion in this album. You'll see a lot of lyrics referring back to other things, which is something I really appreciate, and I don't see a lot in albums today. He says that he was puppeteered and strung along. He felt like a character in his own life, and of course a puppet is held by a string, right? So it's a knot. He says he's tongue-tied, so it's just another knot. Like, there's so much that he gets out of this. It really does remind me of, if you've listened to Blue and Exile's Miles, just how much mileage Blue is able to pull out of these concepts of, like, blue like the ocean, blue like suede shoes, blues like Miles Davis, like, just constantly going forward, taking every single thing he can out of this one idea. And just in this one track, it's just really impressive to me. And it's also just a really good, hard, like, banger rap track, with a lot of substance and contextual relevance to what's going on. So that one I love.
Definitely my favorite song on the album. My comparison is not going to be a Death Grips, because I still don't really know Death Grips. But it's going to be actually to Kid A. I'm sorry, I've got a baby right here, but you can't see her. Privacy. Where the song Idiotech has this very dark, grimy dance feel, and this whole song just has this great, grimy dance feel. It's awesome. Like, it keeps you moving, it keeps you dancing, but at the same time, you're just kind of sad and kind of scared. And that's a hard line to get, and they really, really get this line. That was a burp right there. I'm going to get this. Leave the burp on, but all you're going to see is the straps. I really, really like this track a lot. And also, I relate to it because I have a lot of anxiety, and I've lived a lot of anxiety throughout my life. And I feel anxiety as knots. That is actually how I feel it. Usually it's knots like in my neck and in my shoulders and in my stomach. I had a very good therapist for a long time who would always ask me, where am I carrying my stress? And it was an idea of, like, where did I carry it? And I carry it in a knot. And that's how I hear the song. I didn't even think that it would be about a noose. I should also add that the oven line might be about an alternate mode of suicide, because you can kill yourself by leaving an oven on. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. But speaking of knots, I had this poster behind every single video I've ever done, and part of what I like about it is how it shows. It's supposed to be Kafka's mind just sort of as a series of knots and just very all mixed up and trying to find some sort of clarity. So this was the track that when I heard it, I was like, oh, I'm definitely happy to record to do a video on this album, because this album is really good. Okay, back to Rose, and I have to keep walking to hopefully get her to go to sleep.
And then Fantasyworld, this is the top 5 track on the album. It's devastating. So the character in the album is somewhat a version of Ben, we have to assume. So this song is a precursor to his taking his own life, and how he's feeling that drove him there. And the song is, like, really, really intimate. And he said that it is a precursor, and that the intimate vocals have meaning. And the way that I interpret it, at least, is that, like, his pitch, it's like auto-tuned. I'm a producer, so I can hear that it is subtly at least auto-tuned. And in this track, it seems like he is ideating upon thinking about taking his own life, and he sees it as, like, this fantasy world that he can go to. And so the fact that he is mic'd so closely, so peacefully, right? His vocals are so, like, almost songbird-esque soft. Perfect dichotomy between that and the rest of the album, especially what we just heard, Knott's house setting, where it's just screaming pain, rage, fear. There's so much range in this album that just really, like, blows me away, honestly, because I find myself just aghast, totally taken aback by everything that Ben is able to pull out of this concept and this mood and these themes. And then there's the fantasy world, I think, is also without saying it, is kind of the allusion to this euphoria that people who decide they're going to take their own life feel. Right? There's this idea that people who decide to take their own life, they are remarkably happy and remarkably peaceful and seem like they're getting better right before they take their own life because they finally decided to take that way out. And the fantasy world is kind of that. And he mentions in the lyrics that he's driving past the mountains to another place. His album, first album, not first album, but his album before this. It was like his 6th album. But his album before this was about mountains. So he's literally driving past that, past artistic development, all the things he got through in that album, to a place that isn't real, to this place beyond life. And wow, the song just builds, and there are these massive swells and these huge drums and bass hits. And there's this one particularly beautiful part where he says, leave the door slightly creaking. And when he says creaking, the instrumental cuts out and he says creak in like a really whiny voice that almost sounds like a door swinging open. And then it sets back in with king, creak, king, and then it just slams back in. And yeah, this song is just so overstimulating, made me tear up multiple times. It is this song is an anomaly for me in terms of just music, because it is so grandiose and yet so it speaks to me so deeply. It doesn't feel like too much, which I really, really love. And the little similarities he draws in the track between the little things in life and the end of it. He says it's not a cry for help to rethink your options, which is like, whew, it's the mindset, right? This is a mindset written by somebody who has experienced these thoughts. It's not. There's just satisfaction and finality. He's saying it's nothing's really wrong. I know where I need to go. And that's totally devastating. And of course, incorrect. Don't take your own life. Cringe. I don't know why I said that. And he says, like, going offline next year, I'll go vegan. It's not a woe is me. It's a leave the door open. That's the fantasy world. That's the one I've chosen. He's just chosen to live in delusion and disappear instead of experience all of these little things in life that he knows bring you happiness, because he thinks that the end of it will be akin to those things for him, which sucks. It's just so terribly sad.
Once again, I want to sort of draw the Radiohead parallel where Idiotech goes into Morning Bell and these songs just go so perfectly together. We have sort of a downbeat dance song into a much more sort of mournful, contemplative song. It's a great 1-2 punch that is really well done by musicians who are singing about sad things and are able to make happy sounding songs that are also kind of sad. I'd like to reiterate very much the anti-suicide message. It is hard when you're talking about music that might be romanticizing suicide, but life is great and it's the only thing we're actually given, so might as well use all of it. Who has a more awkward anti-suicide message, me or Rose? Tell me in the comments. I think Cringe actually said it better. I think there's a reason that Rose is better at this. But one thing I really love, again, I just want to emphasize the drums on here. There's these really chunky echoed drums in the back of the song that sort of starts off like a whisper, but it ends with just all this great rhythm. And I'm really happy because I didn't know what Rose was going to be saying, so I was afraid that maybe the rhythm is evident to everybody, but maybe I'm helping to underline something that really makes this album great. She has not fallen asleep yet. I am going to probably repeat that burping sound because it makes me laugh, and baby's burping is hilarious. You tell me if you think this is funny before we get to Rose's next breakdown. Get this line.
And then Fractions of Infinity. This is my favorite track of the year. So there's this lyric in it, you think it's all in your head, you might be already dead. It's funny when you think about it. So that, first of all, so much there. You think it's all in your head, you might be already dead. I think it's a lot of things there, right? It's a call to action to the audience where it's like, no, wake up, live life, blah, blah, blah. Preachy. But it's also, you might be already dead. He's not experiencing anything very different between life and death right now. Death is just much worse, much heavier, much lonelier, much more isolating, much less tangible. So he's sort of saying that, like, nothing is certain. And then, of course, it's funny when you think about it. That's a conclusion to the joke that he asked about in the second track. Tell me a joke. I want to know. It's funny when you think about it, is that everything that he was looking for along this album, all of the release he was looking for, could be had if he was just back to life, if he just never did it in the first place. It's deep, deep, sad irony that all of the release he was looking for in life could be achieved if he just undid what ended it. And then he also says, nothing's going to change until I change what nothing is, which is a great line about how it solved nothing in his life. It just ended it. And he's trapped in a worse place because nothing changed when he died. He has to change what exactly that feeling of nothing is, that emptiness, that, that wish. And it's also, once he's past life, he has to change what nothing is, because he has to either accept this or continue just living on in perpetuity as this tortured being. And, that's exhausting. So I'm just going to read some lyrics here. I see my life inside your hands. Walls cave in when you start to pray. I've seen all I'll ever understand. Wouldn't make sense in another way. I think I hit my target weight. Got exercised while I stood in place. Got every time that I couldn't trace. Yeah, I got restless eyes. They don't look away. It emphasized what I shouldn't say. Okay. Based on what? Ripping up projector screens. The director screaming cut. Based on what? Take 23. Let's get the scene and then it'll be enough, right? Throw some grain on if you can, and that is that. I'm in the space between your hands about to clap. Those walls are caving in, and they say, congratulations, that's a wrap. I love this verse. This might be my favorite verse on the album. So, first of all, the cool supernatural concept of walls cave in when you start to pray, right? His family members praying to him is reaching him, and it makes him be claustrophobic, right? They're choking him. They're trying to bring him back, and he just sees this as a confine that's closing in on him. And that's a terrifying thing. I've seen all I'll ever understand. He gained nothing from coming back, right? Wouldn't make sense in another way. I think I hit my target weight, got exercised while I stood in place. That's a bar. So I think I hit my target weight. First of all, Ben, and he talked about this on social media, he didn't tell me this, he lost like 40 pounds for this album so that he could appear more gaunt in the videos, which is insane. But I hit my target weight, right? Which is to say that he left his body entirely. He is weightless. Got exercised while I stood in place. Got exercised. And exercise, taken out of your body while he stood in place. He took his own life. He was fully still, and now he is exercised, which is a classic little bit of Ben humor put into this otherwise very sad song. Got every time that I couldn't trace. Got restless eyes. They don't look away. Yeah, I mean, if you die with your eyes open, they stay open. So, yeah, just a little thing based on that. It emphasized that I shouldn't stay okay. Based on what? Ripping up projector screens, director screaming cut. So this is cool, because he's sort of, this last piece of this verse is lapsing into this sort of film metaphor. And he's expressed on other songs and on this album that he feels a lot of elements of performance in his life, because he's been a content creator, a musician, a famous person for so long that he's always performing for somebody. So ripping up projector screens, the director screaming cut, that's him taking his own life, right? He fucks it all up. There's this movie that's being made. He is living through his own story, and he destroys it. Take 23, let's get the scene, and then it'll be enough, right? He is just going through the ringer. He feels as though he's trying so many times. I think this could be two things, right? So take 23 just means that he's gone through this long, tumultuous life, and he's sick of it. He's done with it. But on the other hand, it could be take 23. He's tried to take his life a lot of times. Let's get the scene, and then it'll be enough, right? Just nothing ever amounts to enough. Throw some grain on if you can, and that is that. I'm in that space between your hands about to clap. I mean, when you have a clapper to sync audio for films, but then also being a ghost, being ephemeral between, in just existing in an instantaneous moment. Very interesting. Those walls are caving in, and they say, congratulations, that's a wrap. So that's just, right, end of a prayer, hands clap, end of a prayer, whoop, end of a movie scene, congratulations, that's a wrap. That's a great verse right there. I love that verse. And there's this direct reference to the cinematic quality of the album, but also to these themes of viewing his life as a story, viewing himself as a player in a game. And then the title, Fractions of Infinity, is this self-explanatory phrase, this idea that everything experienced is nothing compared to all that ever exists. And words don't do any of it justice. There's something so much more vast, more all-encompassing. It is time, it is death, it is life. And this song is just a snapshot of that feeling of tininess, of directionlessness. And then at the end of the song, crickets. We hear the crickets. All he could hear were the crickets, as he said in Tell Me a Joke. Great full circle moment. And that's just something I love so much about the album, is that it is full of all these full arcs that you only hear if you listen for them. And so we sort of get the idea that song right there is the answer. That's the punchline. It's that it's nothing was funny about it. I gained nothing. It was a waste. But it's still a very compelling way to say that.
The love for this track is echoed by old Seaweed Bear, who says that this is legit one of the most incredibly impressive pieces of music ever made. And I am, as everybody knows, a huge Ye fan. I'm not going to get into politics right now, but I think this shows part of why Ye is so great. This song very clearly bears the marks not only of Ye's backup singers, the Sunday Service Choir, but also some of his production tricks. In particular, in the opening, how there's the sort of choral voice joining just his singular voice. And then at the end, we have the entire choir singing, like the actual Sunday service choir singing. I even think that his reference to saying, sorry, I have to keep bobbing here, okay, okay, I think is a reference to the song Okay, okay. I think there's sort of a cross between everything that Rose was saying, but then also a conversation with Donda by Kanye. Just this repetition of this line over and over again, words don't do you justice. It seems like that might be said at the funeral, I suppose. Although, again, when I listened to this album, I didn't understand the whole narrative. I just kind of liked it. So, and probably my favorite rap bit is on this song, just because the drum beat is so funky, just such great rhythms all the way throughout. And I also especially like how at times the choir is conversational, which I think is quite cute. But anyways, she was asleep for like 45 minutes, and now she's waking up now that I'm talking to you. So let's get back to Rose to close up the album.
And the Cassini's Division, the final track, is just a poem, and it starts off with a piece about being discovered while he was hanging himself. Literally being discovered kicking, and then they turned the lights on and he stopped. And he felt like he was intruding on something because he woke up from his body as a ghost, which, wow, what a heavy, haunting thing to conceptualize and then put into a piece of art. That is deeply upsetting. But it's all underscored by this really like driving, dark and atmospheric and bizarre with these drums from Thor Harris of Swans. And I'm just going to read from my notes here. So this idea that the final problem, in this poem, he expresses this idea that the final problem he has is that nothing and death, they only weigh on him because he rejects them so much. And so this song is kind of the acceptance of being gone. And now that he's gone, he can just say sort of like, I will just wait for the other people to join me. If there is anybody to join me, and then move on. And I think that this song not being as explosive or as insane or as driving or like evolving as the other songs is fitting because it's really not about that, right? Both emotionally, lyrically, conceptually, instrumentally, it's about this final push, this final exhale to just say, this is where I'm at. This is where my character is at. This is how I feel. This is what I have learned, I suppose. And it's kind of like a little bow. And then there's this static at the end that is the nothing enveloping him, and enveloping all we see, and sort of bringing the audience into that it's an overwhelming thing. And the album is, of course, clearly not a pro taking your own life, suicide album. All of it is made to sort of make you consider the, what we experience in life that we don't know is valuable, and what we experience in life that, seems so mundane that we would just mourn and mourn and mourn if it was gone. And I guess two last things about this track. One is that Cassini's Division is the name for the space that divides Saturn's rings into two halves, which, in a sense, naming a division is kind of like naming nothing. It's kind of like naming the absence of something. This is the space where we split. This is this place where we go between life and death. And then also this is death itself, naming a division, naming just something being severed, being taken off, which is really cool. I like that. And it does have this sort of spacey feeling. And if you watch the visual album, shot of the stars, really pretty. Shout out Thaddeus Swift. And then finally, the piano on this track. It reminds me a lot, the piano riff, reminds me a lot of the song By This River by Brian Eno. And I think that the album just is a beautifully produced thing. And it feels like it wears a lot of its influences, not on its sleeve, but honorably, and it feels like that, whether it's intentional or not, just feels like a real, little heart stamp to ambient. And I really love that about it. Okay, so you can use any of this you feel like. You can cut it down, chop it up, whatnot. lighting. Some additional insight that I can give to this album is Ben and I talk a lot about music. So some of the inspirations for this album. Ben absolutely loved the Black Country New Roads album that came out this year. I know that you're a huge fan of them, so I wonder if that influence was at all sort of present there. Some other influences that I think really rang true. Ben's label mate on Dead Air Records, Jane Remover, their album Frailty, absolute knockout. And I know that Ben was inspired by that when it came out a lot. Breakins, White Boy of the Decade. And the Microphone / Mount Erie, Phil Elverum. I hear a lot of that influence just in timbre, texture, how things are mic'd. So that's some other insight that I can offer. Don't look at my dirty apartment. Thank you, Professor Skye. I'm just going to do one last little spiel about everything about this album that really just knocked me out. First of all, okay, so in conclusion to the 37 minutes of footage I'm about to send Professor Skye, I loved this album. I love this album. And the first time, I first heard about this album a year ago, right? Everybody else heard about this album being released a few months ago. I heard about it over a year ago. One of the first times that Ben and I ever hopped on a call together. He showed me unfinished tracks from this album. And he told me about the concept, and I thought, that's cool. It could be cool, it could be corny, I don't know. And he played me a few tracks, and there was this one really cool one that had sort of like almost like a Scottish chant energy and like this like Playboy Cardi delivery, and I was like, that's super sick. And then he played me this early version of Tell Me a Joke, and I was like, that's really clever. I like all the ideas going on here. And I trust you with these ideas, and I think you're going to do something amazing, but I don't know what to expect because this is so different. And he came through. It is completely different. I've never heard an album like this before in my life. It's folktronica, it's hip-hop, it's got rock influences, ambient. It's just all over the place, but very cohesive in this supernatural, just ethereal, sense of something bigger than us, right? The concept that strings the whole thing together, the story that goes all the way through it, captivating. It works from song to song. It is incredibly emotionally. It's a gut punch, It makes me feel very, very intensely. Sometimes in ways that I'm not familiar with, which is something that I can only say about a few albums, right? It makes me feel human in a way that other albums are not always as able to do. The production is just absolutely knockout. I've been producing music for 5 years. Ben is going on 4 years. He's been making music for longer than me, but his sensibilities as a producer, as a recording artist, are only getting better. His vocal delivery, his theatrics, they're only getting better, and they are doing exactly what they need to on this record and more. I love basically everything about this album. And I'm astounded that it exists because it just feels like a lot of artists who are at the size and relevance of Ben would not need to, take the time to go and make their magnum opus or something that they would consider their magnum opus because, they can just put out singles, they can just make money, keep the ball rolling. But Ben chose not to do that. He chose to come through with something really thought-provoking, really interesting, and really, really inspiring and mind-opening for me. And I have taken so much from this album, personally, artistically. It's taught me so much. I feel just in awe of it, really. His artistic metamorphosis is complete, and he knocked it out of the park. And the reason that I keep telling people to listen to it is because I'm amazed. Personally, I am just amazed. I am so in love with this project. My heart is full and also empty. So Professor Skye, I hope you can use this. Tip my hat to you. Thank you for Quadeca auditing.